Hello and welcome to Jessie Bear Book Club. Today is the second part of our Witness Wore Red, the 19th Wife Who Brought Polygamist Cult Leaders to Justice review by Rebecca Musser and M. Bridget Cook. I have wanted to read this book for ages, and seeing as we are now in another lockdown and I need a break from all things Tudor, I thought this would be the perfect occasion. This review has been broken into two parts because it is so long and I have so much to say on the subject. Last week was the first part of this review, and I will leave a link to it in the description of this video. The first part of this review talks about Becky's childhood, her first marriage, and the death of her aged husband Roland Jeffs. She is now being forced to pick a second husband, and this is where we pick up today. Becky is now questioning her faith. Up until this point, she admits she fully believed in her religion, even if some parts of it seemed absurd. Chapter 13 focuses on Becky's internal struggle with whether or not she should remarry. She is repelled by the idea of sex, but she desperately wants to be loved and appreciated for herself. Becky feels old even though she is only 26. Becky knows that she will not be a first wife at this point in her life and doesn't want to come into another marriage and hurt another wife. Becky also wants a young husband and knows that is unlikely with any of the men Warren will choose. She also cannot stop thinking about her step-grandson Ben, who is 19, but he always calls her grandmother Becky, and he is Roland's blood grandson. Becky thinks there is no way Ben would be interested in her because she is 26 years old, ancient in FLDS standards. Becky experiences what she describes as the voice of God, telling her she deserves love on a solo hike up El Capitan. But I feel it is probably Becky listening to her heart for the first time in her entire life. Becky decides she needs to see Ben, and they arrange to meet in a desert valley. And he asks her how she is feeling and that he is very sorry she has to remarry. At this simple, unlooked-for kindness, Becky starts to cry, and Ben holds her to comfort her, but all of a sudden then he is kissing her, and before she knows it, she is kissing him back. Becky and Ben jump apart, and all Becky can think about on her drive home is that she is dirty and unclean, and Roland and God are angry at her. She is quickly discovered because someone has seen Becky and Ben. She is given a severe dressing down by Warren and told she has 7 days until her wedding, and she must choose who she will remarry. Warren also reminds Becky that he will be in her life forever, and that he has ultimate control. Very angry, Becky decides that if this restricted life where she is sexually abused and constantly watched is heaven, she wants to live in hell. I have watched lots of programs about polygamy, and this is a sentence most people say right before they leave. Becky is very frightened but remembers all the outsiders who have been kind to her over the years. So she packs a bag, agrees to leave with Ben, and the day before she is to remarry, she climbs the fence guarding the Jeffs' home, wearing her long dress, quite a feat in itself, to start her new life. Chapter 14 and 15 focus on Becky leaving the FLDS. She has left with Ben and they drive cross-country to her brother Cole's house where he is living in Oregon. These chapters really highlight how ill-equipped Becky is for the outside world. She has no formal schooling and has never had a proper job. She thinks maybe she could teach violin or do sewing, and when she finally gets a job waitressing, there is a lot more to deal with and struggle through. She has a hard time coping with people's lack of deference to her. Even though she knows she is being silly, she has spent the last 7 years married to the virtual king of the FLDS. She is irritated despite herself people don't open doors for her or step aside in line. She also struggles with fashion and not fitting in. She buys a red jogging suit, the forbidden FLDS color, and she even gets a shoulder-length haircut, but then agonizes over the fact she doesn't know how to style short hair. The only hair product she even knows is hairspray. Throughout the book, Becky refers to women's hair as their crowning glory, and I totally get it. I have a lot of hair, and my dad used to get so mad if I cut it or if my mum took me for a haircut when I was little. He is dead, and I still feel really weird about cutting my hair. I totally get the whole connection to hair that women have in religious societies. The most important thing in this chapter is how alone Becky feels. She has always been surrounded by people she knows, but now there is no one except for Ben and her 2 brothers. Even when she calls her mum, her mother berates her for leaving and tells her she is going to hell. The voicemails her mother leaves her on Ben's phone, crying, begging Ben to bring Becky back, are heartbreaking, and Becky is very aware that she and Ben never would have been able to leave without each other. The whole way through the leaving process they backed each other up. Ben and Becky's romance is also ongoing, but it is slow. Ben won't force anything on Becky. He truly cares for her, and Becky is jumpy like a frightened rabbit. He knows giving her space is the best thing to do, and slowly their feelings for each other grow. Becky is still struggling with the outside world, though. She even finds the way people talk confusing and really struggles at work. Becky is painfully lonely. She has always been surrounded by loving women. Her sister is her mother, her many sister wives, and now it's just her, Ben, Cole, and her other brother, and she just doesn't know who to talk to. Ben and Becky take comfort in each other, but that comfort is physical, and very soon Becky becomes pregnant because neither of them know anything about birth control. As soon as Cole knows Becky has got pregnant, he kicks her and Ben out, and they move into an unfurnished apartment where they sleep on the floor. Becky is horribly lonely because her and Ben work different shifts, and Becky decides to throw herself into music. Through music, though, she manages to gain friends at the Opry Hall. Becky is still deeply religious and believes God sent her the music and the people to comfort her in her time of need. Becky still holds many old-school FLDS beliefs and puts Ben's needs above her own, letting him have the car and walking miles back and forward to work while pregnant every day. She is comforted when Ben's boss gives her a lot of old baby clothes, and when her friends at work throw her a baby shower, as she really misses female relationships. She is really grief-stricken to discover her sister Elisa has miscarried after her husband raped her again, and is guilt-ridden all over again about leaving. Becky gives birth to her son Kyle alone and thinks nothing of the fact Ben is out partying. This is normal in the FLDS culture. When she gets home from the hospital, Ben doesn't help out around the house or look after the baby. He just expects Becky to do it all, and she thinks this is completely normal, even though she is worn out. Becky's sister Amelia comes down to help, and Becky is pathetically grateful. Normally I would dislike a character who lets themselves be walked all over by men, but in Becky's world this is normal, and her style of writing shows how differently she thinks now. When Kyle is a little older, Ben and Becky go to Utah to visit their respective families and show off their baby, but it doesn't go very well. Becky's mum is kind but a little cold, and begs Becky to come back. Ben's family are very kind and open, but after the visit is over, Ben discovers from one of his brothers his entire family are convinced Kyle is Roland's son, even though that would mean Becky would have been pregnant for a year and a half. Becky is horrified anyone could believe this. They also discover on their visit Warren's rules are getting crazier. They are followed around the town by the God Squad. One of Ben's brothers, who has also left the FLDS, has married a Mormon girl, and they have a daughter. Becky finds her very easy to talk to, and they are all friends. She even inspires Becky to get her ears pierced. While she is babysitting for them, Becky watches a pre-recorded program on the FLDS and is shocked because she knows the woman on the program. Her name is Caroline Jessup, and even more shocked that Caroline Jessup is exaggerating and lying about the FLDS. Becky believes these exaggerations and lies will only alienate the FLDS further, because people still in the church will know these are lies and exaggerations, and people on the outside will think this is too over the top to believe. Becky vows in that moment if she ever gets a chance to tell her own story, she will tell the truth, the whole truth, warts and all. Becky is happy in her new life, and her and Ben get married. But things with their families inside the FLDS are only getting worse. Her stepfather, Uncle Fred, goes missing, and Becky assumes he is dead. Then her aunt, who is also her sister wife, Aurora, goes missing, and Becky is so worried she contacts the police. She thinks Aurora could be in Zion, the new FLDS complex in Texas, and files a missing person report with the police department there. At this time, Becky's younger sister Elisa leaves the FLDS as well. Warren Jeffs, the new prophet of the FLDS, is now on the run because his nephew has accused him of rape, but the police cannot find him. Becky keeps talking to the police in Texas and slowly grows to trust them. Then Becky's mum and two little sisters, Allie and Sherry, go missing, and Becky and her sister Elisa are terrified. These girls are being forced into underage marriages, and Becky files missing persons reports on all three. Then Becky's stepfather, Uncle Fred, turns up and promptly dies. Becky thinks it is some sort of blood atonement. Her mother turns up in Colorado City for the funeral, and Becky and Elisa see her, but her little sisters aren't there, and they refuse to drop the missing person reports on them. While in Colorado City, Becky realizes things are getting worse. Warren, still on the run, is now considered a martyr, and is commanding stranger and stranger things from his people, including not being allowed to eat pumpkins, and the fact children are no longer allowed toys. A few days after the funeral, Becky meets up with her mother in a car park, but they are followed by the God Squad. Her mother asks her again to drop the missing persons reports on her sisters, and Becky refuses. Her mother gives her son Kyle a teddy bear, and this is the last time Becky ever seen her mother. The whole scene is very sad, and it is obvious to the reader that Becky still misses her mother greatly, even while she is writing this book many years on. At this time, Becky's sister Amelia leaves the FLDS, and so does another one of Ben's brothers. There is a lot of strain on Becky and Ben's marriage at this time because Ben has announced he wants to have sex with other women. You can take the boy out of polygamy, but you can't take polygamy out of the boy, I guess. I find Ben hard to sympathize with. Even though he is kind sometimes, he has very old-school sexist views, which makes him hard to like. Ben is a product of the FLDS, more so than Becky, I feel. During this time, Elisa decides to press charges against Warren for helping to organize her underage marriage, and because of this, Warren gets on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. After months on the run, Warren is caught outside Las Vegas with his brother and his wife Naomi, the same Naomi that was Roland's sugar wife and Becky's sister wife. The next few chapters talk in detail about Warren's trial, and I won't focus on it too heavily. If you want all the details, read the book. Becky and Elisa give evidence at Warren's trial, and their family members still in the FLDS put an enormous amount of pressure on them not to do so. Elisa even has her brakes cut. Ben's family are the most vocal against Becky, giving evidence at what they see as their prophet's trial. This puts a lot of strain on Becky's marriage. Becky is pregnant at this time with a baby girl, and she is deeply hurt and saddened by family members telling her she and her baby are cursed to hell. There is also the fact that the trial was televised, and Becky is now recognized by people she works with who didn't know her background beforehand. Warren's lawyers prevaricate, and after the preliminary trial, it takes months for everything to begin. During that time, Warren tries to commit suicide and even admits to molesting his sister and his daughter. He also renounces being prophet, but the FLDS doesn't listen. They keep saying it is all a plot by the US government and that Warren is a martyr. Becky finds being a witness very hard, especially because she is 6 months pregnant. Every time she goes to court, she wears red, the banned FLDS color, as a symbol of her defiance, and she reminds herself every day she is doing this for all the young women out there, her sisters and her unborn baby girl alike. When the trial is over, Warren gets 5 years. Becky is happy with the outcome, but is horrified they are planning to go through all this again because there are charges against Warren in other states. Becky has been drained by the experience of giving evidence and the family backlash which has come her way. This has caused a deep divide in her marriage, and she doesn't know if she can continue being a witness. There are still ongoing missing persons reports on her two little sisters, Allie and Sherry, and when Becky's mother calls her and lets Becky speak to the two girls on the phone, everything sounds rehearsed, and she knows somebody is listening to the phone call. Becky gives birth to a healthy baby girl called Natalia. The only problem is Natalia has a large, dark birthmark covering one eye. Becky is devastated for her daughter's sake, as she knows how much the world esteems female beauty. Ben is unsympathetic in the extreme. He accuses Becky of being shallow and wanting a beautiful child, causing the rift between the couple to deepen. Becky can't help but wonder if the birthmark is a sign from God of his displeasure, like her family said there would be. But she knows the FLDS esteem such disfigurements as a sign people are especially favored by God. At this realization, she knows she is coming to peace with her own idea of God, and no longer feels so angry toward Roland. Then, out of the blue, she gets a phone call from the sheriff in Texas, telling her little sisters want to close their missing persons reports, and she has to fly to Texas to ID them. Just as Becky is about to leave for the airport, she gets a call from the sheriff. Her sisters are refusing to see her, and her father is now to fly down to Texas to ID them. Becky is deeply hurt by this rejection. Then, in the last third of the book, all hell breaks loose. It covers the raid on Zion and the extended trials of Warren Jeffs and the other high-ranking members of the FLDS. I don't even know where to begin describing the raid on Zion. There are so many factors to consider. All I can really say is the whole thing was horrifying, especially when they discover that white room and that white bed. I won't give away too many spoilers because this really is the climax of the book, and I feel people should read it for themselves to get the full impact of the crimes that were being committed in the name of God. The raid on Zion and the many trials that followed put too much strain on Becky's marriage. It fell apart. Ben could never understand why Becky felt so strongly that she had to help the FLDS, and I think Becky summed it up perfectly when she explained to Ben, "You have never been the young girl molested in the name of God." I think that is how a lot of activists feel. Becky goes on to become a human rights activist and has gained and helped the world understand that the FLDS were essentially people trafficking in the name of God. I give this book an 8 out of 10. It is a compelling read and very painful at times, but it was definitely worth it. The only little problem I had with this book, the last few court cases Becky is involved in go on forever and they were very repetitive. I will definitely read Becky's little sister Elisa's book, which is called Stolen Innocence. But in the meantime, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more FLDS content whenever I get round to reading it. And remember guys, keep sweet!